So Donald Trump took one of the last stable economic relationships the United States still had, looked it dead in the eye, and decided to burn it down. And this time the market didn't shrug, didn't hesitate, didn't wait it out. It crashed hard. What we are witnessing right now is a collision between two entirely different realities. On one side stands the Trump White House, chaotic, grievance-driven, and obsessed with dominance at any cost. Every interaction is treated like a zero-sum power play. On the other side is Canada's leadership, with Mark Carney at the center responding, not with theatrics, but with precision, discipline, and cold economic competence. And here's the brutal truth. Trump has no idea how to deal with that. But make no mistake, the American economy is the one taking the hit. It's almost surreal watching this unfold. We are talking about flirting with recession, fueling inflation, and torching the relationship with our closest ally, all because Trump assumed he could strong-arm a G7 nation the same way he stiffed contractors and bullied vendors. The audacity is staggering. Let's call this what it is. This isn't strategy. This is narcissism disguised as policy. And no, this isn't just about a bad trading day or a dip in the S&P 500. This is about something far more dangerous, a collapse of confidence in the United States as a rational, predictable economic actor. When markets start voting with their feet, the consequences don't stop at Wall Street. They ripple straight into politics, livelihoods, and global credibility. The fallout from this will be severe. So how did we get here? Let me walk you through it. Donald Trump returned to office with a chip on his shoulder the size of the national debt. He was determined, desperate, even to prove that his so-called tariff man persona wasn't just bluster, but a legitimate economic doctrine. From day one, he acted as if volume could replace logic, as if shouting bigger numbers could somehow override basic economics. We've seen this movie before: the threats toward Mexico, the public feuds with the Federal Reserve, the constant attacks on American companies accused of insufficient loyalty. Trump cemented himself as a leader who genuinely believes that chaos is a ladder. But then came the real test. He picked a fight with Canada. More specifically, he zeroed in on Mark Carney, who has quietly emerged as the opposition's economic anchor, thinking it would be an easy win. Canada, in Trump's mind, was polite, weak, dependent. Push them hard enough, he thought, and they'd fold. That assumption was a catastrophic miscalculation. Fast forward just weeks into this standoff, and the damage is everywhere. The Dow Jones has hemorrhaged thousands of points amid wild volatility. Manufacturing supply chains across the Midwest are stalling as components sit trapped in regulatory purgatory. Construction projects throughout the Sun Belt are frozen because material costs have become impossible to forecast. And why is all of this happening? Because the Trump administration has boxed itself into a corner, refusing to retreat from a threat that virtually ever, why economist agrees, is self-destructive. And, right in the crosshairs of this chaos, your 401k closing parenthesis. Now, Mark Carney is supposed to be the dull one, the technocrat, the banker, the guy who speaks in spreadsheets. But here's the twist. Carney understands leverage, real leverage. And he understands it far better than Trump ever has. He isn't playing a messaging game. He's playing a structural one. He knows the U.S. economy relies on Canadian energy, resources, and stability just as much as Canada relies on access to the American market. And let's pause on the irony for a moment. The self-proclaimed business mastermind is being outplayed by a central banker using basic business fundamentals. That's what happens when you confuse bluster with power. Now back to the unraveling. By late November 2025, reports began surfacing that the West Wing was rattled badly. Sources say Trump exploded when the market numbers came in, dismissing the sell-off as a conspiracy and accusing Wall Street itself of disloyalty. Yes, really. The President of the United States was effectively calling the free market a traitor for refusing to applaud his trade war. And this wasn't behind closed doors. Trump made sure everyone heard it. Middle of the night posts, public attacks on Mark Carney, shots fired at the Federal Reserve, condemnations of American CEOs who dared to voice concern. The message was unmistakable. Trump wasn't angry at the policy outcomes. He was angry at reality itself. That announcement sent shockwaves straight through the financial sector. It forced an uncomfortable question into the open. If Donald Trump, the man who measures success by the stock ticker, was willing to turn on the markets themselves, what exactly was everyone else supposed to do to protect their assets? And let's be honest, this shouldn't have surprised anyone. Donald Trump's loyalty has always been conditional. It extends only as far as his own ego. The moment a person An institution, or an idea stops serving his needs or worse, reflects something he doesn't like, he turns on it without hesitation. We've watched this pattern repeat itself over and over again. Think back to Rex Tillerson, Trump's first Secretary of State, a former ExxonMobil CEO, a corporate heavyweight. But the second Tillerson attempted real diplomacy, actual engagement with allies, adherence to international norms. Trump undermined him, humiliated him publicly, and ultimately fired him via tweet. Loyalty meant nothing once Tillerson became inconvenient. Then there was John Kelly, a four-star Marine general brought in to impose order on a chaotic White House. Kelly tried to control access to the Oval Office. He tried to introduce discipline into the decision-making process, and for that sin, trying to be the adult in the room, he went from my general to a dog in Trump's eyes. Structure was betrayal. And don't forget Brian Kemp in Georgia, a conservative governor, who followed Trump's agenda nearly line by line. But when Kemp refused to break the law and overturn the 2020 election results, Trump turned on him, instantly recruiting a primary challenger with the explicit goal of political destruction. Even Mitch McConnell wasn't spared. McConnell delivered. Trump, his Supreme Court justices, his tax cuts, his entire legislative legacy. But because McConnell acknowledged the reality of the election and condemned January 6th, Trump has spent years trying to tear him down. Now, it appears the American economy itself has landed in the hot seat. This pattern is painfully familiar. You can offer absolute loyalty, total submission, but the moment the feedback loop turns negative, the moment the numbers dip or the data disappoints, Trump discards reality and attacks the messenger. He demands an economy that only goes up, even as he pursues policies that push it down. So what exactly did Mark Carney do to provoke Donald Trump? Simple. He refused to participate in the theater of submission. The impasse began when Trump demanded that Canada unilaterally rewrite portions of the USMCA to further benefit American dairy and lumber interests. Beyond what was already negotiated. Canadian officials attempted to explain a basic economic truth. Integrated supply chains don't bend that way without hurting American workers as well. But Trump wasn't interested in explanations. He wanted a headline, and that's when the markets finally snapped. Investors realized something deeply unsettling. Trump was willing to sacrifice economic stability for a political stunt. That realization triggered the sell-off. Mark Carney, drawing on his background in financial stability, responded the opposite way Trump expected. He adopted a counter-inflationary posture. He spoke directly to Wall Street and to global markets, making one thing clear: Canada would not retaliate recklessly. Instead, it would diversify trade and insulate itself from chaos. That message mattered. The markets heard it. Someone finally was behaving rationally. At first, Trump seemed oblivious to the danger. He understands the idea of leverage and assumed the threat alone would force compliance. But as the standoff dragged into December, the cracks started to widen. The bond market began to revolt. Yields climbed. The dollar wobbled. And while Carney remained steady, public opinion shifted. Americans increasingly blamed Washington for the instability. Polls showed growing frustration over rising gas prices and shrinking retirement accounts. This was the moment Trump started to sweat. You see, Trump doesn't just value wealth, he values the appearance of wealth. He wants to be seen as the architect of prosperity. Being associated with a bear market triggered by his own outbursts, that's not a victory narrative, that's a branding disaster. Then Carney made a move Trump considered unforgivable. He publicly announced that Canada would offer stability credits to businesses that maintained cross-border operations effectively, subsidizing predictability in the face of Trump's volatility. Stability as policy. When Trump found out, he erupted. In Trump's worldview, stability is an act of defiance. A foreign leader calming markets undermines his strategy of chaos. Anyone who dares to neutralize the volatility he creates is immediately labeled a saboteur. And that left the White House boxed in. On one side, Trump desperately needs the markets to rebound. The donor class will abandon him the moment their portfolios start bleeding. On the other side, he has to win the fight he started, and that contradiction, needing stability while demanding chaos, is where everything begins to break. That means finding a way to force Canada to capitulate without detonating the US economy in the process. And that's where the problem lies. Doing that would require something Trump fundamentally struggles with: humility. It would require retreating from an extreme position and admitting that escalation has limits. So Trump is trapped. He has two options, neither of them comfortable. He can continue trying to bully Mark Carney and the markets themselves, which guarantees deeper losses, higher inflation, and the growing risk of a recession heading straight into the midterms. Or he can do the actual job of a president, de-escalate, honor the trade agreement, and calm the markets. But that path carries a different cost. It makes him look weak to his MAGA base. And that's the mess Trump always creates. He demands total victory in situations that require compromise, then lashes out when the house of cards collapses. He has never hesitated to throw his own economic advisors under the bus when it suits him. And this time is no different. Inside the Republican Party, the stress fractures are becoming impossible to hide. If Trump is willing to turn on the markets and publicly undermine the wealth of his own voters, every Republican facing re-election has to ask a terrifying question. Am I next? Moderate Republicans trying to balance business interests with culture war politics are now watching their words carefully, worried that even acknowledging economic reality could earn them a primary challenge. Meanwhile, the party's most extreme faction has gone all in on denial. To them, the market decline isn't policy failure, it's a deep state operation. Their solution: double down, escalate further, burn more credibility. The situation escalated again when a group of Republican senators led by figures who actually understand commerce finally broke the silence. They had been pushing for a quiet resolution behind the scenes. Instead, they went public, criticizing the administration for gambling with the full faith and credit of the United States. And when the business wing of your own party turns against you, you are officially in trouble. Now let's talk about the legal and institutional reality, because this fight triggered a massive response. The American business community decided enough was enough. On December 10, 2025, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce filed a lawsuit in federal court, arguing that Trump's threat to invoke the International Emergency Economic Powers Act (EPA) to impose tariffs on a treaty partner was a blatant violation of the law. Congress, they argued, never intended emergency powers to be used as a personal bargaining chip to rewrite trade agreements on a whim. The Constitution is clear. The power of the purse and the power to regulate commerce belongs to Congress, not the executive. The courts moved quickly, recognizing the urgency. Every day of uncertainty meant billions of dollars in lost value, and the filing itself pulled no punches. It was a direct assault on the administration's legal theory. The plaintiffs argued that Trump's actions were ultra-vires beyond his authority and a violation of the separation of powers. That's legal language for a very simple message: you are not a king. You do not get to wake up and tax the American people because you're angry at a foreign leader. The filing's description of the president's rationale as pretextual sent shockwaves through Washington. It was a reminder, public, formal, and unavoidable, that Trump is not above the law. This kind of confrontation is extraordinary. Business groups suing a Republican president to stop him from destroying commerce is not something that happens in functioning democracies. Legal scholars have noted that we haven't seen a clash between Capitol and the White House on this scale since the Great Depression. And then came the statements that should make everyone sit up straight. Conservative legal icon George Willan, unwavering advocate of limited government, went on television and delivered a blunt assessment. He said President Trump's attempt to govern the economy by fiat represents the very definition of the tyranny the founders sought to prevent. Let that sink in. The word tyranny coming from the intellectual heart of the conservative movement. Another heavyweight, former federal judge and conservative stalwart J. Michael Luttig, warned that the non-delegation doctrine must be revived to stop this abuse of power. When conservative legal minds start openly discussing constitutional crises and executive overreach, it's time to pay attention. So what does this showdown actually mean? This isn't just a gripping financial drama. It has real consequences for how the American system of government functions. First, the immediate political fallout. Trump is already taking damage. His approval ratings on economic stewardship, his strongest issue, are slipping as market instability continues. Suburban voters are growing anxious about their retirement accounts. They voted for stability, not a trade war with Canada. And now there's a new problem. Inflation expectations are rising again. That's a brutal headline for any administration, especially one that claims economic mastery. Most Americans may not track the stock market daily, but they understand one core principle: hard work should be rewarded with security. Right now, that promise feels broken. And make no mistake, Democrats are already preparing to capitalize on it. They will argue forcefully that Donald Trump believes himself to be above economic reality, and that he places little value on the financial security of American families. And they won't just say it, they'll show it. Red arrows on stock charts, falling indexes, shrinking retirement accounts. This will become exhibit A in the case that Trump is unfit to manage a complex, modern economy. Expect those charts to appear everywhere. Opposition campaign ads, floor speeches, televised debates. The visuals will be unavoidable. Now let's talk about what this means for the institution of the presidency itself. Mark Carney has been deliberate in presenting Democratic leadership as stable, almost boring. He wants institutions to function as designed: markets, courts, trade frameworks. But Trump's actions have turned this entire episode into a live demonstration of just how fragile those institutions can be when pushed to their limits. Trump and his supporters are already signaling their next move. If the courts rule against him, they will be attacked, their motives questioned, their legitimacy challenged. Claims of bias will flood the airwaves. That reaction alone complicates the rule of law. But the business community likely concluded they had no other option. Staying silent while these violations continued would have inflicted even greater damage on the American economy. And that brings us to the core question at the heart of this crisis. Can a president simply destroy economic value whenever he feels like it? If the answer becomes yes, if Trump prevails here, it fundamentally alters how our system operates. The American economic framework was built to encourage commerce and protect property rights. It assumes restraint, predictability, guardrails. Trump has always bristled against those limits. He wants the power to pick winners and losers. If this abuse is allowed, it represents a major step towards state-directed economics. And worse, it creates a precedent. Future leaders will see the door wide open to weaponize economic power for personal or political gain. That's why the implications of this case reach far beyond a single trade dispute. This is about shaping the structure of the American economy for decades. Every time Trump ignores norms, breaks laws, or undermines market principles, he weakens democratic systems. He normalizes behavior that once would have been unthinkable. And normalization is how democracies erode, not all at once, but piece by piece. Think about it. If Trump can crash markets to punish a political rival, what stops the next president from seizing industries outright? If emergency economic powers can be abused at will, what prevents the next leader from following that same path? These actions don't disappear when Trump leaves office. They linger. They become precedent. They become the new normal. And that is profoundly dangerous. Capitalism depends on trust that the government will maintain a stable framework, even when it's inconvenient. When that trust collapses, the economy doesn't just wobble, it falters. Looking ahead to the 2026 midterms, it's clear this crisis will have lasting political consequences. We're still months away, but the narrative forming now will shape everything that follows. If the story becomes one of Trump battling the markets and losing, that's disastrous for the Republican Party. The voters don't reward chaos. They don't reward instability. They don't reward declining wealth. They want competence. They want predictability. They want prosperity. And right now, Trump is offering none of those. Expect the opposition to lean hard into a message of stability. After years of upheaval, many voters are ready to believe that checking Trump's power could actually allow markets to function again. No constant constitutional crises. No trade wars with allies. Just governance. Normal, boring governance. That message may resonate especially with voters inside Trump's own party who are watching their net worth evaporate in real time. So, here's the bottom line. Donald Trump tried to strong-arm a partner who refused to be bullied, and the American economy is paying the price. This isn't just a failed negotiation, it's a revelation. When it comes to economic policy, the emperor has no clothes. If the markets continue to slide, the so-called Trump premium becomes a Trump discount, and that would place the United States in a dangerous new reality, one where the president himself is the single greatest risk to the economy. This has never really been about Mark Carney. It's about whether America still operates as a free market system or whether power can simply be abused to manipulate outcomes. So pay attention. The next few weeks are critical. Lawsuits are advancing. Markets are watching. Confidence is being tested. We are only at the beginning of this story. The stakes have never been higher. The evidence has never been clearer. And the outcome has never been more uncertain.